Today's episode, Josh and I are going to talk about the post-trade deadline Denver Nuggets with Aaron Gordon, as well as we're going to debate the NBA's, and I'm going to put a question mark at the end of this, buyout debate, as well as we're going to throw two questions at each other about some end-of-season current topics that have come up and just see what we think, as well as everyone's ever-so-favorite trivia. Next. Welcome back to today's episode of the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh.
We are happy to have you back. We are going to run through at the top, like I mentioned. First, we're going to start with the red hot. If I say that one more time, I'm going to vomit everywhere. But I do say red hot about every team this year that does some sort of awesome win streak. Last time it was the Jazz we talked about. The Nuggets, as of recording this, I feel like I jinxed them because I texted Josh on Saturday evening or Sunday at some point and basically said, we need to talk about the Nuggets. They're 8-0 since they've acquired Aaron Gordon at the trade deadline. And then they proceeded to give up a 31-3 run in the second half to the Boston Celtics. And they proceeded to lose that game. They are 8 in their last 9. I thought I was going to come into this Monday and say, yay, they're 9-0. But they look like one of the best teams in the league and the West, and they look ready to come out of the West and look like Aaron Gordon was the final piece. What you think?
To reiterate what I said on the trade deadline podcast, Aaron Gordon was the biggest acquisition of the trade deadline. Clearly is an all-star quality player. When you texted me today, when we got on the podcast, or when we got on this call first before we started, you said we jinxed the Nuggets. And I was like, we? I didn't say anything about the win streak. That was all you. I jinxed the Jazz when they were winning 19 in a row. I didn't jinx this one.
Well, we're 1 for 1 now, or 1 and whatever. No, I definitely think it's funny because I didn't disagree with the fact that Aaron Gordon was, I think, the biggest impact on. And I even asked you, that's how we opened the trade deadline pod. I said, all right, I read through the 2 minutes of all these trades, and I said, which one has the biggest playoff implication? And that was your answer. For some reason, NBA Twitter and the NBA world thought the Vucevic, his teammate, was the bigger trade, and I was really surprised that by just how that looked on Twitter. And I mean, Aaron Gordon's obviously an impactful player. I just think we thought, we think of this guy as a Blake Griffin type, a dunker, not a guy that you're going to see help an impactful championship team win some games in a playoff series, but he's been red hot. He's been super engaged. He's continued. I read an article today from the Denver Post that I thought was really interesting, that he's been meditating twice a day and he's been playing chess with multiple teammates. They did not name those teammates, which I thought was weird, but I think it's really neat. He seems like a really engaged player this year, and I think he's really going to take that next step for them, and I hope it continues in long term because I've been high on Aaron Gordon out of Arizona. I thought he was really fun. I got to see him a little bit in high school. He was a really good player, and I think it's really fun to see where he's come and obviously helping this Nuggets team contribute.
Okay. 2 things. One, that's a little bit harsh on Blake Griffin and saying you're comparing him as a guy that's not going to help a team win down the stretch.
I said he did.
Blake Griffin was the number 2 piece.
I said he would help. I said he could help. Could help.
Oh, I heard wouldn't help.
Could.
Okay.
Help. He will. He definitely will.
Because I was going to defend Blake Griffin in his prime, who was the number 2 guy on that Clippers team that was so good for so long.
Number 2? Huh?
Chris Paul was one.
Was he?
Yeah.
He was?
Look at what Chris Paul is doing now.
Yeah.
I think Chris Paul was the best player on that team.
Okay. So, hold on a tangent.
Somebody's got to pass him the ball.
Really fast. Before your second point, I think this Chris Paul thing brought up something I saw this week. Someone from NBA Twitter, I thought it was the funniest thing. I had to share this. I never sent it to you because I thought I'd find a way to share it this week. Someone posted and said, Chris Paul should start a show like Gordon Ramsay does, where he goes throughout the NBA and joins a different team each year, and he does NBA nightmares. He tries to rebuild the Timberwolves and rebuild the Detroit Pistons and rebuild the Kings. He just goes and shows up and puts them second in the West or second in the East, like he's done for every team. I wish this was visual. Josh is laughing so hard at this,
I
as you can
love
hear it.
that so much.
I do too, and it went ballistically viral. It went like I think it's coming up on 80,000 favorites at this point.
Next
I don't
season,
remember who did it.
Sacramento.
On this season on Chris Paul's Hard Knocks. Like that's literally what it's going to turn into. Where's he going next?
Half of it's a serious like Last Dance style documentary. The other half is just State Farm commercials.
100%. It'd be so much fun. The thing that's funny though, the ironic part of this whole debacle of a joke is that he hasn't won a championship. Yeah. How can you rebuild a team if you haven't won a championship? We give him way too much credit. Now, historically, don't get me wrong, he's in my top, I'm going to say 7 to not stir up the listeners. He's in my top 7 point guards all time.
That's fair.
We'll get to somewhere in that list at some point in the offseason when we're bored for a month. But regardless, what was your second point in regards to Aaron Gordon? Sorry.
Oh, just that, like, the reason I thought Aaron Gordon was the biggest impact is because with him going there now, the Nuggets are just loaded with talent. They have the rightful MVP in Nikola Jokic. I'm not going to back down or qualify that statement. I'm going to state it point blank. They have Jamal Murray, who at one point last season and at points this season shows flashes where he plays sometimes at the level of the top point guard in the NBA. Then you add in Gordon, who's a physical freak, whose scoring touches improved massively when people weren't paying attention over the past several years. You've got Porter Jr., who's one of the incredible young talents in the league. And, I mean, like, the Nuggets have it all for what you'd want to try to make a run. Unfortunately for them, the West is stacked. I don't think they're going to win the Western Conference. Because I'm still on the Utah train as of today. But
so 7-game series, do you think Utah, no matter what, gets it done? No matter how dominant Jokic is, correct?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I don't have anything. I mean, Aaron Gordon's going to be an impactful player for a while for them. And I think it's going to be fun because I think, if I remember correctly, he's still got 2 years left on his deal. I want to say that is just completely without looking. That's completely without looking. I'm pretty sure he has 2 years left on his deal because he signed that extension in 2018, I think it was. I get my years mixed up with where the cap changed a couple years ago. But regardless, Mike Malone's got him in full speed, and I think they're one of those teams that just you don't want to turn them off, even though for our time on the East Coast they're 1030p. So it's one of those teams I just don't want to miss. Now, right now I still think it's one of the teams out of LA, maybe depending on health. And then, like I said, I'm going to ride with my Phoenix pick, and it's scary to say that like this West could. You got to think, like I saw this the other day as well. But I will say this: out of the 5, you got to think the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Suns, and the Jazz. Someone's got to go home round 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
You don't want to hear who I think it is right now either.
It's the Los Angeles Clippers. No, it isn't. Yeah. Well,
you realize that right now the matchup is LA is going to have to spend most of their games in Denver. LA being the Lakers will have to spend most of their games in Denver in the current matchup, and I don't like that for the Lakers, not this year.
Yes, unfortunately. I will say, though, they are eyeing a 3-week return as of this rate. Sometime in the next 14 to 21 days, both Anthony Davis and LeBron James will be back on the floor. How that impacts this series, because we still got about a month, give or take. I think because some of the rescheduled games, I don't know what they're going to do, but I think the Nuggets only have a handful, so they'll be ready. They'll be healthy, and Porter Jr. is going to prove everything I've said about him this year wrong, and he's going to look like Jamal Murray did last year. I think I'm going to be mad when you're going to see me mid-May. I'm going to be pissed. So, anything else you got on the Denver?
Longer than the Lakers?
We don't bet on this podcast, but we need to for that somehow. We need to find a way to. Actually, this is obviously going out to 500 people. So, hey, somebody's going to hear this and quote it for us, or I will. Anything else you got on the red hot Denver Nuggets?
Stop saying red hot.
I don't have anything else. I really don't. Okay. They've been fun.
No, I think we can go ahead and move on. So the next time we're going to talk about, does the NBA have a buyout problem? So the reason I had this idea to discuss, I saw an article on ESPN this week that was suggesting, it was a debate topic in the NBA on whether or not the NBA should change their rules to limit or prevent some of these top players who are getting bought out going to top teams. It's a very weird premise, but stick with me here. So the idea comes along from, I believe this year, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Andre Drummond, and the three prominent.
And Ben McLemore. Don't forget about Ben McLemore.
I'm sorry, what? You mean the guy that wrote a thrift shop?
No. The guy that beat the Nets single-handedly the other night, went 5 for 10 from the three-point line. That Ben McLemore. Don't sleep on my man. LeBron tweeted about him. You know he thinks it's real. Anyway, proceed.
Okay. So we saw LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin both signed with the Brooklyn Nets after being bought out, and we saw Andre Drummond signed with the Los Angeles Lakers after being bought out. And the issue becomes, if all of these players that are being bought out are funneling to top teams on minimum contracts, I think the idea that they're talking about, should the NBA do something in the sake of competitive equity to prevent some of these all-stars on minimum contracts going mid-season to already super teams, or should the NBA completely stay out of the businesses of players choosing where they want to go play? It's a two-sided coin. What do you think?
I think we had this conversation. If we had this conversation 10 years ago, it'd be completely different. And not 10 years ago, let's say 15, because that would be enough where Commissioner Stern would still be in power. I think this conversation goes completely different. However, I will just, as a recap, there in 2019, Enes Kanter signed with the Blazers over the Lakers. Wesley Matthews signed with the Pacers. Wayne Ellington signed with the Pistons. So there are signs of guys that are impactful on championship teams that don't go there. However,
those guys you mentioned were former All-Stars. I just want to point that out.
Correct. That was literally my however. However, the rest of them are not named Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Andre Drummond, who are going to be, when I say impactful for these three teams or these two teams, they are going to be like, we are going to look back and Andre Drummond's going to have a game in the Western Conference semis probably or something. And by the way, he is 3-0 this year against the Brooklyn Nets. Andre Drummond is. He is going to impact heavily. Aldridge, he understands. He's quoted multiple times this week saying that he understands he's got to get into the film room and understand where he's at on defense. It is a problem, to be clear. I am going to now finally be on record and say it is a problem. Look, this is not, I'm not an NBA numbers guy in terms of money, but I've read some things like you said about, there should be implications. There should be some kind of penalty. I'm all for some form of tax or some form of whatever word you want to use for it. It's just a basic fun way to say the word fine. But basically
luxury tax.
Luxury tax. The team, thank you. The team should be penalized in some form. The only people, the only negative really out of it is the fan impact. I mean, there's no negative in the sense that it's not, the team saves money. The player goes where they want, as long as the receiving team is okay with them coming and wants to give them whatever. I mean, quite frankly, the only person that doesn't reap any benefit is the player that gets signed for $810,000 or whatever it is, 840. I think it's just shy of 850. It's not.
They get a benefit too.
Right. Other than
they get the buyout, so they get
Correct.
the value of their contract that was remainder that was guaranteed. They get another small salary on top of it, and they get to move to the city of their choice.
Now, correct. And now, one thing I will say is just, I think it's going to come down. You mentioned the NBA staying out of it. I think it's going to come down, obviously, to the next CBA. I think it's going to be really important. I think it's going to matter. I think we're going to really need to be paying attention. I don't know actually when that is, but I don't think it's far from now. But it's going to be really impactful. The other thing I would say is I saw a really interesting take on this that I don't hate it, but start a bidding war. NBC Sports, I want to say that I want to get the writer correct. Dan Feldman brought up the idea of basically the original team would get, obviously, the players' original team would get maximum salary relief. all other teams would have opportunity to acquire that player. And if the player badly enough wants to enter free agency before his original contract ends, he can do so, provided his team agrees to that buyout, obviously. And then they bid. They actively bid. I think it'd be really weird and fun and different. Obviously, there's some problems it could cause.
So it's like
Monopoly.
Well, I was going to say it's similar to baseball's waiver claim system. Are you familiar with how that works?
Yes, I am.
Because I'll explain it for viewers on here. The way baseball works, when a player gets waived, the player, what it means when a player goes on waivers and why it's like a couple of days before there's a process of a player actually being released, they go down in reverse order of record. And each team from the worst team up to the best gets an opportunity to put a claim on the player as saying they want that player to put on their roster when one team waives them. Once the team makes a claim, they then have the rights to negotiate with that player to strike a deal. And if no team claims the player, then the player enters unrestricted free agency. But in this idea, it would just be like every team has an opportunity, but it comes down to the team with the willing to pay the most would get access to that player.
Some would also similarly call that, I think the term you're looking for, obviously how baseball does amnesty waivers. Is that correct? I want to say that is the correct term. But basically, it comes down to basically the union who typically defends freedom of player movement is going to have to agree with that. I obviously am not saying, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I just think it's, hey, we're throwing out takes and we're throwing out the fact that the CBA is coming up. I want to say it's within the next 2 years. I can't remember now off the top of my head, but it's very soon. But really, I think the one thing we're going to see, this conversation could also be had very differently come July. Mm-hmm. Come when we see if it's not the Lakers or the Nets, then we obviously can laugh at this take and move on. And we probably read it back in a year and be like, oh, yeah, remember that guy? Like, example, who's somebody right now? I have one in my head. Who do you have any, right now that you think could be impactful next year on the buyout market, like based on contract last year, that kind of thing? I've got a big one.
I don't know if it's going to be on the last year of their deal next year, to be honest. I don't.
Kevin Love. He's not going to be on the last year, I don't think, but he is going. Actually, I think, yes, he is, because he signed that extension 2019. So, yeah, so Kevin Love is going to be one in the future. If it's not this year, it's next, right? Or if it's not the year we're coming up on. Regardless, he's one that I think people have always, leaned to. Big contract, guys that are going to still make their money and go and try to win another championship. And obviously Kevin Love is, obviously a champion already. So I don't know. I just think it's going to be hilarious to see how this story changes 4 different times, but I'm not surprised it's been talked about, a good amount. And I think this year it's always been a problem, to be clear. This year it's been front of mind problem.
Yeah. So I threw the conversation out there, not because I really think that something needs to be changed. Might be thrown for a loop here on that.
Okay.
I don't think there's something that needs to be changed in the buyout rules. It's obviously the buyout rules were put in place for the most part to aid contenders. That's the whole, they were to aid the teams that wanted to get the salary off their cap and move on from the player, and aiding contenders because these are usually guys on losing teams who are going to be moving to winning rosters to play roles there. This was always drawn up as a way, the whole rule was just there to aid contenders, so it's always going to be that way. My question really comes down to, is this just another part of kind of the problem in the NBA or in all pro sports, honestly, that comes from you have your group of teams that are group of players who are amassing super teams, Brooklyn, and your group of teams who are intentionally trying to lose basketball games. They're tanking really hard. Is it just more of this problem that pro sports is having? You have your handful of super teams, and then everybody else isn't really trying to win.
It's a double-edged sword, and I think, you said it yourself, and I think I agree with you. It's something that is one of those things that we're just going to continue to look past because the NBA they care about tanking now. Like, they've obviously done things. They've changed the lottery. They've penalized for sitting a certain amount of time without any plausible cause, et cetera, right? But it does come down to the fact that, the race for the bottom is as low as ever, and the race for the top is as high as ever, right? In terms of you're going to get guys you want. I will say this, though. It's not recent. It's not something I think is going to change. I agree with you. I think it's interesting to throw these fun ideas out there just because it's a good point of conversation. It's something that at least needs to be had. Just like the change in the world now. If we're at least having the conversation, we're at least going to get to a point where it may change, correct? What I would say is historically, history repeats itself, right? Or what's the old thing? History is written by the victor. I sound like the nerd on the podcast, or I sound like the smart one. But this very, ever so happened a long time ago in 2008. Crazy to think that was a long time ago. When the Celtics signed PJ Brown, and he basically won them the Cavs series in 2008 that led them to playing the Lakers and winning the finals. So this is not a new thing. Period. It is what it is. It's one of those things that I think, CJ McCollum and some of those guys on the PA is going to have to really come in there and defend themselves, which shout out to CJ McCollum for being the new NBA PA president. But just, it is what it is. It's one of those things that the owners are going to be able to still make their money. They're going to save money. Obviously, they're not going to change this rule. They're not going to be the ones putting their foot forward.
Actually, they would have to be the ones that would want to do it.
Exactly. I mean,
the players are the ones that are definitely not going to change it because it favors them in every way.
So then, all right. So if we've had this open conversation in 10 minutes,
it would have to be. The small market owners are the ones that would want to change the rule.
Like, say a Charlotte Hornets owner.
Yeah, like that. Like Michael Jordan.
Right. So I'd be curious to know what his take is on it. The thing I would say, though, is after 10 minutes or after 15 minutes, however long it's been, we've revolved back around to where, if everybody's reaping the benefit of it, is it really a bad thing because fans complain? Fans complain about everything. It seems like
everybody's way back. Right back around. Not everybody's reaping the benefit of it. You've got your group of small market teams that are perpetually spinning their wheels and tanking, trying to rebuild, and trusting the process. Spoiler alert, I'm not a fan of trust the process tagline, but it's where you end up with your Minnesotas who, even when they constructed a team around Kevin Garnett that made the playoffs so many years in a row, they never seemed to really get close to a title. And now they've just cycled back down to tanking to trying to get back up there again. But then you have your Los Angeles Lakers who, longest period of time they spent in the NBA dredges was 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly bring in LeBron James and Anthony Davis because they're a large market.
Are you trying to get a ruse out of me? Is that what you're trying to do?
No, it's just the Lakers are the best example of this. I could use the Clippers as well.
They are.
And the Celtics as well as an example if I wanted to.
And the key to every one of those teams, Boston, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston. Are you sensing a trend? New York, Brooklyn. Are we sensing a trend?
Big markets.
All of these cities are all,
except for the Knicks, which they seem to somehow not be taking advantage of this.
The Knicks right now are currently, fun fact, higher in the Eastern Conference standings than the Boston Celtics. That is wild to think. I thought that was really interesting.
I definitely didn't talk about how Danny Ainge made that team worse this summer. Partial side note. Did you hear where Brad Stevens talked about how upset he was to see Daniel Tice go? All is not well in Boston.
One of the two of us on this podcast was really surprised why the heck they traded him.
Brad Stevens was too.
His name is Trevor. He's called that. Who's going to play center for them? I said it was going to be freaking Jaylen Brown.
That's Robert Williams. But.
Yeah. And look, Time Lord's looking good. Don't get me wrong. But they're just now getting hot, and they're getting hot a little too late. They're probably playing the play-in, period. Scary for Celtics fans.
Okay, so big news broke this week. And speaking of the Timberwolves and small market teams, the Minnesota Timberwolves are probably being sold to an ownership group led by Alex Rodriguez, who, for those of you who only watch basketball, is a prominent baseball star. He's retired baseball player, most famously for the New York Yankees. Trevor, what were your thoughts on seeing that?
So first of all, I think it showed people that Alex Rodriguez has a lot more money than his Google net worth says, or you look up Google and
part
you
of
see
the ownership
he's worth
group.
$350 million. Part of, and he's part of only two people. Him, and I want to say his name now is, give me just a moment, Mark Lore. There we go. I wanted to make sure I at least got it all out there. Another thing I think a lot of people are missing is that it is both the Timberwolves and the Lynx, which is really neat.
Well, yeah, they're one company.
Right, which is neat. Like it's cool that they're going to really try to build both brands. What I would say also is that, and this is a very big point that I think a lot of people missed, two things. One, why NBA Twitter was so mad that Kevin Garnett wasn't part of the deal. Maybe he didn't want to. I'm going to be the harsh dad on NBA Twitter. Maybe he didn't want to, NBA Twitter. Relax. Kevin Garnett, maybe he's got the money. We know that. We've all seen Uncut Gems. Okay. He was really good in that movie. He had a lot of money. We get it. But Alex Rodriguez is ready, and it was impending. If you watch Shark Tank, if you watch all these things about Alex Rodriguez, you see where he's putting his money. It's all channeled to the fact that he's trying to make a purchase like that. It was very obvious. It was a matter of when and where. I agree with you, though. I don't see him, he's obviously going to be partial in this. I don't see him spending his, summers in Minneapolis, or even less so his winters. The second thing I would say that a lot of people miss, I think this is really good that we brought this up. In the contract, verbatim, and I quote, team will not be relocated within the first 7 years. Period. So Seattle fans, I'm sorry. I'm heartbroken for you, but Minnesota's not your relocation team. Now, granted, contracts are just like anything else right now. You can shred them up and move on, but that's probably not happening. This is a huge sale. This is a huge thing that's been impending for a franchise that, quite frankly, Josh and I have always been very clear that we are not high on, and we are hoping for better things moving forward. Shout out to Karl Anthony Towns, people like him. But anyway, I think it comes down to the fact that they should be moved. Oh, I don't either. But they're also miserable, and I think at this point it's just impending. A lot of people really thought like, oh my gosh, wait, is this the next step to Seattle? No, it's not, and you're going to be waiting another 10 years at least for that. We talked about it.
They're not going to. Side note to this conversation, there's not going to be a team that's going to move to a different city right now. Adam Silver has been very open in that he doesn't want teams to move from the cities they're in. He does not want teams relocating.
He would rather expand.
He wants to build them up where they are so that we have 30 teams that are financially healthy and then expand to 32 teams.
Correct. Which I wanted to make sure that was out there because I think a lot of people aren't realizing that, or it's not being talked about enough. I haven't heard it on any big, thing. I saw it through CBS Sports. That was the last, the only place I had really seen it. So in the contract, verbatim, not being relocated. That's all I have on it. I think it's a really big deal.
When teams are sold to be in the contract.
Just didn't want any misconception. I don't have anything else on it. So I believe it's time for me to throw my spitball, my off the wall, whatever question you want at Josh. I just want it on the record because we're a month away from the season ending. Josh.
Yes.
Who do you have right now winning the MVP in a month from now, or in month and whatever? I think it's a month and 7 days.
And I'll tell you why. In this podcast,
I know. I wrote that down and I laughed at it. I put LOL on my paper because you said it, and you didn't see me whenever you said it. I looked away and I hid behind my microphone because you had already said it. Yeah. So you were on record. You think it's going to be hold the trophy up in June whenever they do this stupid ceremony a month and a half after we all care about it. Nikola Jokic is the MVP.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Well, okay. Yeah, okay. I'm going to stick with yes in that I think, because here's my thing. I have no doubts that he deserves it. My issue comes in with that I'm not always a fan of the way that sports writers vote on this award. And I think it often will go to guys who don't deserve it. So
narrative.
Yeah. But I think right now, I think that the narrative really wanted it to either go to LeBron James or Joel Embiid, and they've both been so derailed by injuries that it has to go to Nikola Jokic now.
Bingo. That's why I brought it up. Now I do want to just, you brought this up on yourself, so I do want to hear this answer. People who don't deserve MVP, do you have an example that you'd like to put on record? I'm going to give my picks, by the way, very soon after this conversation. I think I know where you're going with this. We have a friend that's
how Giannis won 2 in a row?
Oh.
I think
Okay.
Harden should have won 2 in a row. Giannis should have won 1.
I agree with you.
I think James Harden has been discredited and judged quite a bit when he went on for like 3 years, the most unbelievable scoring tear we've seen since Michael Jordan. So, yeah.
Crazy. Would you say 2017 Westbrook was not deserved?
No, I think he was. I think
Okay.
if you are the first guy to average a triple-double since Oscar Robertson and the second time it's ever happened in NBA history, it's good enough for me.
I died on that hill. I agree with you. I am sticking with Jokic. I know that's awful to say that the two podcast hosts here are chalking it up, but I am going to throw out 2 really intriguing names because, for one, we were on record for one of them, and for 2, when you say narrative, this one's going to be an awesome narrative that I think builds up if they continue winning based on the way they played against the Jazz the other night. I'll tell you my first one. Chris Paul, right now, if the season were to end, I would probably really, really, really consider voting for him if I had a vote. His stats don't pop out to you. He's averaging 16, 9, and 4.
That's the problem.
But Steve Nash was one of the best players on his team, or the best, obviously the best player on his team, but Stoudemire was a great scorer. He was a 2-time MVP. You mentioned 2-time, not deserving it maybe the second time. Not going to take away from Kobe there. I'm not digressing. However, the point would be that Chris Paul is the best player who, by the way, the Suns haven't won 30 games or more since 2013. So he's the reason they're doing well. As much as I love Devin Booker, he's the MVP of that team, and I think he could be the MVP of the league if they continue on this stretch the way they play against the Jazz. The second player is Luka Doncic, because he right now is the reason the Mavs are semi-relevant again. And we were on record, and you can laugh. We were on record.
I'm just laughing because we're wrapping back around to Luka Doncic.
We wrote it in, bro. Listeners can go back, opening pod. We wrote it in. Luka was the MVP. Obviously, we didn't see LeBron, Embiid, Jokic, all that coming, right? So it is what it is.
Definitely didn't see Jokic coming.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to ask because obviously it's one of those things you're going to see Nick Wright and those guys on was Fox Sports, I guess, but you're going to see Shannon Sharp. You're going to see First Take. You're going to see whoever talking about the MVP for the next month, right? And I wanted to at least get it out there, and it's obviously a conversation that even if we spend 2 minutes a pod between now and season's end, at least saying like how's the narrative changed, because I think it's important. Just wanted to
I'm just gonna throw just my last point on this conversation. I'm gonna throw some numbers out there for you. Okay. I want you to tell me what position you think this player plays.
Okay.
Player's averaging 26.2 points per game, has 8.8 assists, is shooting 42% from 3, gets 11 rebounds a game, and averages 1.5 steals. Now, what position do you think this player plays?
I can tell you who the player is, and you're not tricking me. I listen to a daily podcast, and they tell me basically what happened that day or the day prior. It's a recap. The only reason I do know that 100% is because I know that he's shooting 42% from 3, which is wild. He's a center, and he's probably the best passing center ever, if not the best. I don't think it's I think it's close between him and a few others.
Nikola
He's
Jokic.
Definitely probably is the best passing center ever. All right, I'll say it.
You didn't say his name.
Awesome.
Like I just want to make sure that everybody listening can hear that.
He is but awesome, and they are good right now.
He's a center who averages a steal and a half a game, almost 9 assists, 11 rebounds, 26 points, and shoots 42% from 3. He's a center.
I like that. See, I like that you put the stamp on it at the end. To back up your defensive point that a lot of people don't give him enough credit for, he's top 3 in deflections in the league right now. Fun fact. Speaking of fun facts, what you got for me for trivia?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit complicated.
Oh, God.
And fun.
You did warn me, by the way.
Yeah. You have an opportunity to score 3 points. There are different ways you can score a point. So I'm going to lay them out here in a second. So I got this based off of I was on NBA.com, and the debate goes on as to what the greatest NBA draft in history was. And they mentioned 3 draft classes.
By the way,
I'm going to tell you what those draft classes are.
By the way, that documentary, I haven't watched it yet, but it looks awesome about the 96 draft. We need to watch that, and we need to talk about it next week. I think it'd be really cool. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So part of the question is going to be about the 96 draft, but the debate is the greatest draft ever the 84 draft, the 96 draft, 96, or the 03 draft?
3 draft, yes. Okay.
So my question that comes to you, and the way you'll get the opportunity to score the points, I want you to tell me the top 3 picks, which number they were picked on for these 3 drafts. You can score a point either by getting the first 3 in a single draft. If you get 3 ones, you would get a point as a different option.
You keep track of the points. Don't worry about that for the listeners. Okay. You keep track of the points and summarize.
So I want you to tell me who.
Can I go in any order?
Yeah, I mean, you can go. But you've got to you have to name me the player and who took them.
Okay. I'm gonna start with
and
2003.
What spot they were taken in.
I'm gonna start with number 2003, not number 3. I'm gonna start with 2003. Just simple, good, and get this one out of the way because I think this is the easiest one. Believe it or not, as big of a Kobe fan as I am, I'm going to struggle with 96 because I know it's loaded, but I don't remember the top 3 very evenly in their order.
Because Kobe was taken 13th.
At 13, correct. So it is loaded, though. That draft class, that's, by the way, on record, I haven't even seen the documentary. That is my favorite draft class of all time, 96. I'm biased, yes, but that draft class is disgusting. Anyway, 2003.
The last funny part that I wanted to mention in here with these 3 drafts, in each of those 3, the first and third picks went on to be all-stars, and the second picks in all of them never were all-stars.
I can only name 2 of them, I'll be clear. Second picks, at least. So, 2003, LeBron was taken by the Cleveland Cavaliers at 1. Darko Milicic was taken number 2 by the Detroit Pistons. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Detroit. Because they could have had a Carmelo Anthony, who was picked number 3. By the Denver Nuggets.
There you
Denver
go.
Nuggets. I can also tell you that Dwayne Wade was taken at 5 and Chris Bosh was taken at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure for the listeners that they knew I had a little bit of good history there by the Raptors and the Heat, obviously. However, the 96 is, believe it or not, where I struggle. I can tell you that my favorite 90s guy other than Kobe, or mid-90s guy, early 2000s guy, Allen Iverson, was taken number 1 by the 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, I do know he's a bust. I know it's a big man. It is a big man, but I can tell you it's a big man, but can you give me the college? I don't want the points. I just want can I just see if I can get it? I want to impress myself, basically.
Do you know where they went to school? Massachusetts.
Oh, then I'm not. Marcus Camby?
Yes.
Oh.
Selected by who?
Oh, man, he's talking about journeyman. Oh, gosh. I remember him playing. This is not my answer. I remember him playing in Denver. I remember him playing in Toronto. I remember him playing in San Antonio, maybe. I want to say it's Toronto, but I don't think it's Toronto. Was it Toronto?
What's your final answer? Because this is for a point. So
Toronto.
I need a final answer.
Toronto.
You get that. It is Toronto.
Okay. You are going to give me the point, even though you're going to give me the point.
The third person. So
okay, you are going to give me the point. Okay, even though the college. Person. Sure. I'm pretty good with NBA colleges, so I feel like that was probably why I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say 3 was Ray Allen. It was Ray Allen, correct?
No,
it was not. See,
Ray
that's
Allen
where
was selected 5th.
96 messes me up. See,
and I then traded to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you that. I thought he was drafted by Seattle. So, 3, I just don't give me any points for 96, or obviously I got the 1, but tell me who number 3 is at 96.
Sharif Abdur-Rahim.
See, yeah, he was a baller, man. Average
selected by the Vancouver Grizzlies.
I did know that. He was a baller, man. He really was. Over 20 points per game multiple times. God, that one's tough. I think 4 was really good too. I want to say obviously 13 was good. A couple second-round picks were really good.
Can you name 4?
I can't. I told you 96 is my worst one, and I think it's the best one.
Marbury.
Marbury, yeah. See?
Selected weirdly by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah. Once again, not turning out well for them. No,
And then Antoine Walker went 6th to the Boston Celtics.
And he was underrated as well, man. Obviously, you got Nash in there too, correct? At 11.
Nash was at 15. So there was
15.
There were a lot of busts from 7 to 12. Then
Okay.
13 was Kobe. 14 was Peja Stojakovic.
Nice.
15 was Steve Nash.
Okay, so that draft class is loaded. It's top heavy though.
Well, yeah. So look later down the list to explain why this draft was loaded. 17, Jermaine O'Neal. 20, Zydrunas Ilgauskas.
Nice.
And that's it. As far as big names go.
Still think 96 is the best, by the way. I think you can't top Kobe, AI, Ray Allen, and a handful of others.
Throw Marbury in there. Steve Nash.
Exactly. I just forgot a 2-time MVP. However, here we are on 84. So where am I at points-wise?
You scored 1 point.
Because I got I guess if I get this last number one, which number one in 84 was.
Well, so the way I meant the scoring there was that you could either get it by like naming the 3 number ones or naming 1, 2, 3 on a class.
Got it.
I'm not going to give it because otherwise you'd be able to score like 6 points.
Okay. So as of right now, I'm only going to be able to score 1.
Yeah, if you can name all 3 of these and who picked them, which I feel like this is a pretty famous 1, 2, 3.
It is. I can tell you right now. I can just rattle it off. Formerly known as Hakeem Olajuwon, it was Hakeem Olajuwon at number 1.
Hakeem, right? I wasn't even going to hold you to that.
Houston Rockets. I feel like that's a half point deserving. Number 2 was the ever so unfortunate, and I think he would have actually been really good. I don't think Greg Oden would have been very good, to be on record on that hot take. I think Sam Bowie. Don't give me hell for the pronunciation. Sam Bowie. Okay, Sam Bowie by the Blazers. Unfortunately, injuries was just the reason that he just got derailed. It's unfortunate there. And do I even have to say number 3 and where he went? Number 3 was the second greatest. But I'm kidding. I'm
and
kidding.
You lost the point. There it is.
I'm kidding. We'll wait till at least
LeBron did not go third in the.
No, we'll wait till they're retired. So our friends are gonna laugh at this if they listen all the way through. Number 3 is Michael Jordan, drafted by the Chicago Bulls out of Carolina.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so by the way,
You get 2 points just for fun. Can you name me the other Can you round out the 4 and 5 of the 1984? Because you seem to have it really well there.
Drexler was 4 or 5. I can't remember. No, he wasn't. So then, no, I can't. I thought Drexler was coming out with Hakeem that year, but
I do not believe Drexler was drafted that year because I'm not seeing.
Well, I was like negative 14 years old. So I mean, the fact that I got the top 3 is cool. I feel like a lot of NBA fans that at least pay attention probably would have gotten that. 4 was Sam Perkins, selected by the Dallas Mavericks, also out of the University of North Carolina. Yep. And 5 was Charles Barkley, selected by the that was Charles' draft. Was David Robinson 84 or was he 85?
85, because Robinson went number 1 or number 2, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So
other big names in this draft: Alvin Robertson was selected by the Spurs. Otis Thorpe was selected by the Kansas City Kings. Kevin Willis went to the Atlanta Hawks. John Stockton went 16th to the Utah Jazz.
Nice. Those draft classes back then were you were getting guys like in the second round that were so valuable for your team long term. It really was crazy. I'm rounding it off with this, unless you've got more draft. Which, by the way, it's gonna be so much fun to talk about the draft very soon because I have a lot of draft knowledge, and it's not just that one, but it's just a matter of getting the year right for some of these guys. That's what messes me up.
Because I can tell you where there. You named 8 of the
9. Yeah, the Abdur-Rahim one makes me mad because I think he's a baller, man. I think he's so good, underrated long term.
You lead the scoreboard 5-3. You're now 2-1. I'm also 2-1. You lead on the score. Just have to make sure that you rightfully give me opportunities to score more points next time.
Absolutely. Or since we're back to the top and you were the first one, I'm pretty sure we can start only doing, for complication reasons, we can start doing only 1 point answers. I'm tired of the score system already.
That's no fun. That's not.
I know it's not.
Then the segment lasts like 5 seconds.
Correct. I'm going to end with this. A little, today in the NBA history, a little catalog here. 8 years ago today, Kobe tore his Achilles and hit 2 free throws and walked off. And that was in my opinion, as a fan of him, that was the final moment of his career up until his retirement. I think that was basically the turning point of the clock there. I just wanted to put that out there. 8 years ago today. Shout out to Mamba. Anything else you got for me on this, believe it or not, actually pretty exciting week in the NBA? We thought it was going to be kind of mellow here with the last month here, no pun intended, with the last month of the NBA season. We thought it was going to be just, playoff mull and MVP conversation for a month. But, hey, we'll find something to talk about, right?
Yeah. No, nothing more than shout out to Nikola Jokic and Jonas Valanciunas for saving my fantasy basketball team this weekend. And
how crazy would it be if you had Cantor,
I was trailing by 50 points in a matchup. We're not in the playoffs, we're still in the regular season, but would have kind of kept me out of a playoff spot in this fantasy basketball league. And then Jonas Valanciunas scored 50 fantasy points. So, the man.
Hey. How crazy would it have been if you had Cantor too?
Well, I was playing against Cantor. That's why it was a game.
Okay. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Cantor scored 50 the night before, and then Jonas got me 50 to kind of match that off. After another fun week of the Two Pointers podcast, I'm Josh.
I'm Trevor.
And we'll see you soon.
Bye.